Okay, here's our picture that we took at the studio. This is the before and this is the after. Before, after. So we're gonna go through a very detailed step-by-step tutorial using Lightroom, Photoshop, and Luminar 4 to get this picture to look like this. Stay tuned. Alright, so let's do some fashion photography retouching. For this video, you're going to need to download the Photoshop action that's on my website. There will be a link on the video description, so please download that before you begin this tutorial. Also, I'm going to go real slow, and so there will be markers in the video description, so if you need to jump back and forth to a specific part of the video, feel free to use that. And finally, my name is Jamie, and I do videos about my experience with photography and video equipment, as well as software like this tutorial. If that's something that you're into and you like, then hit that like button, and as well as feel free to subscribe. So with that, let's get started. Alright, let's get this party started. So this is a kind of a dynamic shot that we got this weekend during a lighting workshop at F2F Studios, and so we got this photograph and we're gonna see if we could get it to post on Instagram. So the first thing we'll do is crop it. Oh, where'd it go? Alright, so Instagram layout is friendlier at 4:3, so that also cuts the modifier that we had here. By the way, this shot here, we did it with 2 strip boxes on the side and 1 big modifier pointing down at the model as she was jumping up. Kind of a cool shot. I like the dynamics of it. So alright, so we got this cropped at 4:3 for Instagram. We'll hit done, and the first thing we'll do before we take it to Photoshop is we're gonna clean up the floor. This floor here from the studio was kind of dirty. This is from a completely white background, but because of the lighting, it looks kind of gray. That's fine. I kind of like it. Separation between the jumping model and the background. So to clean the background, the way I'm gonna do it, there's different ways to do this, but what I'll do is with the brush, I'll go over the floor, and you'll see what I'm doing later. Obviously it's looking worse right now. But anyways, I just brushed around the floor, and the settings on the brush have it to less exposure. So what we'll do is we'll bring up the exposure just a little bit and bring down the contrast. Highlights will be at 0, and we'll bring down the texture and the clarity. So what that does, it just blurs out a little bit the floor and kind of gets rid of those spots that you saw, and also bring down the sharpness. That also kind of cleans it up a little bit. That way we're not healing or cloning, and it just looks a little bit more sharp and clean. So that looks good enough right there. We'll hit done, and the next thing we'll do is we'll take this photo to Photoshop to clean up the model's face. So before we do that, is you zoom in. This girl, she's a teenager, and so she's got a little bit of acne and some spots on her face. That's normal. I mean, even models with perfect skin will have some blemishes on their skin. So what we'll do is we'll bring it into Photoshop and clean up her skin. To do that, we'll use a Photoshop action that you could download from my website, and I'll leave the link down below to where you could download and install this Photoshop action. Okay, so we're in Photoshop now. If you click on actions, I already installed it. It's called Jamie's Simple Face Retouch, and if you don't know how to download and install a Photoshop action, I'll leave another link to videos that show how to do it. Basically, you just bring in the file into Photoshop, and you'll be able to see it under your actions. Once you see it here, you'll actually see a folder and you spread it out, and right under it you'll see the action and basically what the action does. So this is basically doing a bunch of layers, really 3 layers. 2 of them are going to be for frequency separation, and what that does is it cleans, is what it's made for, cleaning up and sort of softening the skin of the model. And then the other layer is going to be for dodge and burn. So I'll go through this as we go along. So let's double click on here, and oh, you know what, before I run this action, let's see if we could sort of shape this model's body just a little bit using Liquify. So I usually do this before I run the Photoshop action. So what I'll do here is on Liquify, we'll just bring in maybe your stomach just a tad bit. You know, this is a fashion photo shoot, so we're gonna bring it just a tad bit, and you know, bring in a curve just a little bit to shape up her body. You can play around with the face and stuff with the sliders here. I usually don't. You know, sometimes depending on the model, but maybe bring in face width and jawline kind of beautifies just a little bit. It's subtle. I don't do it much, like I said, but you know, it kind of looks good here, so we'll leave it at that. Not much more. So you see, kind of brought in her waistline just a little bit, made it a little slimmer. She's already a slim girl, but this definitely curves it up a little bit more. All right, so now what we'll do here is we'll run the Photoshop action by clicking play down here, and as I mentioned earlier, it's gonna bring in these different layers here. We'll start with the blur layer to sort of get rid of the blemishes and different colors that the skin may have. So we'll zoom into her face, and this was shot with a Canon EOS R, which I think is 20 something megapixels or 30, I don't know, whatever, but pretty decent definition that we have here. And if you look at her face as we zoomed in, there's definitely a little bit of blotchiness and stuff that we could fix. So starting with the blur and with the lasso tool, what we're gonna do is basically just go over big patches of skin, and we're gonna blur out this different discoloration. So go to filter and blur, Gaussian blur. So for this, just bring the picture. There we go. For you can zoom in to make sure that you're, excuse me, so you're zoomed in, right? Okay, so 12% or so. Usually for this camera in studio, I do about 19 to 22 pixels, depending on. If you bring it all the way to the right, see what happens. It just makes it really dark. So we don't want that. But I think right around 19 or 20, it's good enough, and you still see the little bumps in her face or from acne. But what this does is basically, now if you look at the sample here, it smooths out the coloring on her skin. So we'll leave it at 23. That's actually pretty high. I usually use 19 to 20, but that's okay. We'll use 23. And so once you set that 123, every time you go up here to filter and just Gaussian blur, it'll do it at the same settings that we had earlier. So try to be more accurate than what I'm doing right now. Kind of doing it fast to demonstrate it, but you see, it definitely makes the color even out. And it doesn't touch the actual texture of the skin, because it's on a different layer, but it does even out the colors through the blur. So let's see, I think we're kind of good. I'm gonna hit this here. Alright, so the intent here, by the way, is not to make her skin look fake or anything like this. To make it still look natural, but just clear up the irregularities. Okay, so this is pretty good right now. Now we'll do texture and Control D to deselect that lasso tool that we had. So now that we got the texture layer selected, we're gonna use the clone tool and click on option. We're gonna sample part of her face that's pretty clear, and we'll basically spot clean up where we see like little bumps on her skin. Very subtle, very what this does basically is it keeps the natural texture on the skin. And be careful because the X starts going to her hair, so you have to try to always resample before you click. So as you can tell, it's not changing the color, it's just changing the texture because we're on a texture layer, and that sort of cleans up the I guess she just has a little bit of acne, so she's a young girl, so that's normal. And we're good here. We don't want to overdo it because we're also going to do dodge and burning, and that's also going to soften up her skin just a bit. So now that we're here, like we said, dodge and burn. So the last layer all the way to the top, dodge and burn, we're going to change the tool to the brush tool, and make sure you have opacity at 33%. Flow 100 and smoothing at 10%. So what this is gonna do, we're basically gonna paint skin on her, paint light on her skin, and then we're gonna sort of fade it and blur it to make it look natural. So you can make the brush bigger or smaller using the bracket key. That's a shortcut. So let's start first with the white. And when you start painting, by the way, I'm using a mouse, so keep the button of the mouse clicked so that you don't do 5 different clicks. That'll increase the opacity. So what I mean by that is, let's say if I start painting over her face, see, this is very subtle. If I let go of the mouse and I click on it again, you could tell that you see where I did not paint over the previous brush. It's actually less opaque than the other. So basically here, instead of being 33%, now we have 66%. We don't want that. So we're gonna hit Control X and Control X to undo that and start over again. So we're gonna do some triangles on her forehead, a triangle on her forehead, to sort of simulate light into her forehead and down her nose. A little bit of light on the chin. We're gonna make this a little smaller here and do quick triangles on her cheeks and bring out the cheeks. I learned this technique from another YouTuber who I can't remember his name right now, but what I'll do is I'll leave his tutorial link down below because I thought it was great and very fast and very efficient. So these are the dots that I like to put on the face, also on the lips. Let's see. And you could use a brush, not brush, like an Apple Pencil and an iPad to be really accurate. I haven't needed that, but if you're doing client work and you really want very detailed, you want to do that. Very detailed work. And anyways, we'll click X to switch to the black color and make the brush bigger. And the first thing we're going to do is go over the sides of her forehead to darken in sides of her face. I was going to contour, I think we already did it here, so I was going to contour her face. So I guess the best way to explain this is for women that really know a lot about makeup. It's just basically contouring the model's face. So we don't have to be super accurate because we're going to blur this later, so you'll see what I mean. Bring this here. Make this smaller, do a little bit of the eye socket. Smaller brush. A little bit here. And I like to do this as well. Right. Like I said, I'm using a mouse, so not super accurate, but doesn't need to be. You'll see what I mean. Just a little bit. Right now I know it looks kind of weird, but bear with me. Okay, so I think this is good. You could also bring this in if you want. Again, what we're doing is sort of placing base level makeup, and what we're going to do with this layer is we're going to blend it with soft light. As you can tell, that kind of softened it up, and now we're going to filter it using Gaussian blur. Go back to Gaussian blur, Gaussian blur. Don't use the one here because that's going to use the same pixel count that we had when we're doing the frequency separation. And so make sure you go down here, Gaussian blur. And for this, we're going to use a different pixel count depending on what works. So we'll just bring it up. See, it's too much, obviously. So I think right around 19 looks about right. So okay. And if you hit the little eye next to the layer, you'll see the difference in how we contour her face. So I think that looks pretty good. We could back up now and really see the difference, because when you're zoomed in you don't see it as much, but when you're backed up you do. So now that we're backed up, you see her cheekbones really kind of pop out. So I think that's good. You could also, if you think you did it too much, you can still use the opacity and bring it down. So maybe like around here. I think we kind of nailed it, so maybe like 91% or so, but even if we have it full at 100, I think that's good enough. But I'll bring it down to 92% just to have it a little bit more subtle. That looks good. Now we're looking good. We were able to sort of reshape her body just a little bit, contour her face, and then we got rid of the blemishes and acne on her face. This is starting to look good. We're gonna close here now, hit save, and that'll take a trip back to Lightroom. Okay, come on. Come on now. so it's still writing. Okay, boom, we're back. All right, so use the difference. Oop. What we had before is after Photoshop. Okay, so now we'll do a couple more things here. Usually when I bring it back to Lightroom, I do the teeth and the eyes. Can't really see her eyes much because she's looking down, so I'm not gonna mess around with that. And for her teeth, she's using braces, so it's very tricky. It's kind of tricky, so I think I'm gonna leave that alone. What I might do is just maybe her lips are a little bit light, I guess. So what I'll do is with the brush, we'll just make them just a tad darker. And I guess it's basically applying a little bit of makeup. And you'll see. All right. Gonna sort of soften her lips just a bit, and good, not too much. Temperature. Let's play around with this. See if you go to two extremes, you'll more or less see where you're going. So we want it to be a subtle thing. Not too much. Warm it up and maybe like right around here. Alright, let's back up and see how that looks. It looks good. You know, it's subtle, so not a huge change here. So her skin, if you look at it, even though we did frequency separation and some dodge and burning, it still looks natural, still looks this texture here. It doesn't look overly done. It's not that Instagram filter fakeness that you see. It looks still pretty natural, and that's the look that we're going for. Okay, and here the last thing that I'll do is two things. I like to send it to Luminar 4. Luminar 4, the way I use this is as sort of a filter, kind of like the way people use Instagram, but this is a filter on steroids, Instagram on steroids, and what it does is it has a bunch of different filters that you could use, and it also has artificial intelligence that makes that takes the details of the picture and makes them really pop. So what I do here, and this software, by the way, is about $60-$70. I think I paid for this, so I think it's worth it if you do a lot of photography. You could also do stuff like changing the sky on landscapes and all kinds of stuff. It's definitely worth the investment. So anyways, click on portrait, and one of my favorites, if not my favorite, is the female portrait one. We'll hit it at 100, and you can't really tell that much what it does, but it softens the skin just another little bit, and it warms it up. So it does a really good job. Furthermore, I like to do a little bit more of AI accent, and on the portrait enhancer, I like to use the AI skin enhancer. It just softens it up just a little bit more, and you could click on this AI skin defects removal. So now it's really looking good. Okay, and it also, gives it a little bit of additional sharpness and just a really cool pop look. All right, we're done here. We'll hit play, And what that will do is bring it back to Photoshop for the last touch. And my last touch and my secret, it's not so much of a secret since it's on YouTube now, but I like to, once I've already cleaned up the skin and done what I want to do with the picture, I like to increase the texture and clarity just a little bit. Kind of gives it an additional, sort of contrasty look. So I think that's cool. Very very cool. I'll put it. All right. We'll clean up the background just a little bit more here. Let's see. Some dirt here. So there you go. All right. And last but not least, let's give this a little bit of vignette. We could use the mask tool, or we could also use this here, the post crop vignetting tool. So I don't really like using this too much because it never really gets it right, but maybe like a -7 or so. And then here what I'll do is I use this mask and bring it over here with an oval. I think the name of this tool is different, but you know where to click. We'll turn this just a bit. So in the air. And bring down this portrait just a tad, maybe like there. Texture and clarity, and bring down this portrait. I think that's good. I think we're good here. Got a lot of detail and maybe just a little bit of sharpness. Make it pop. Yeah. All right. And that's it. I think we're ready to post. Let's export this thing and see how it comes out on Instagram.
All right, so if you found that helpful, please hit that like button. Feel free to comment if you have any questions. I'll get to them as best as I can. And feel free to subscribe as well. I'll be putting out videos like this in the weeks to come. Thanks. Enjoy doing this video, so if this is something that you like, if this was something that you found value in, he'll